Hello and welcome to episode 507 of the Burger on the Freak podcast. I'm the bloke from Rugby League Project, Andrew Ferguson. You can find me on Twitter at AndrewRLP. And join me as always is the glorious LeagueFreak. You can also find on Twitter at LeagueFreak. How you going there, mate?
I'm good, Andrew. How are you?
I'm doing good. I just for some reason I felt, you know what? I'm just going to add a pause. Just in a random place, just a pause.
Nice. It happens.
Build a bit of emphasis.
Well, we were just talking about what we're going to talk about on the podcast, and all of a sudden started burning really good chat, and so we decided to fire it up.
Yeah. So now we've got nothing to talk about.
Yeah. So basically, what we were talking about is, I didn't even write I don't even call it an article on my website. I basically put a thing up that said, what is the most premierships that any NRL team has won in a row? And it's the Dragons, obviously, with 11 straight. Mm-hmm. And when I posted it on my Twitter feed, I said, this is the greatest team of all time. And that's it. And I posted it and got surprising pushback on it. And me and Andrew were just talking about it then, and we both think that Dragons team is the best team of all time. You know, we kind of go by results, me and Andrew. We're really weird like that. And then Andrew said something interesting. What did you say, Andrew?
Yeah, look, I was saying for a team in the modern era, in the salary cap, I'm going to say it just because I know you don't like it.
Okay, yeah, I hate it. You can tell
NRL era.
Oh, fuck you. There's no NRL era. Can we? Okay.
No, so he's triggered now. Yeah, so in the salary cap period we've got here, mm-hmm. because it evens out the competition so intensely, and we've seen that by the fact that it's become ridiculously hard to win just even back-to-back premierships. Which is why so much fanfare has been made over Penrith winning 3 in a row. I don't think, given how the playing field's been levelled out so much, that you need to win 11 premierships in a row to be considered in the conversation as being one of the greatest dynasties ever alongside that Dragons side. Because that Dragons side was able to just go, you know what? If we've got the majority of the money, we can buy whoever we want, and what are you going to do about it?
Okay.
But I was saying 6 to 7 in a row
mm-hmm.
in the current environment. You should definitely be seen in that same conversation with that Dragon side.
I disagree. Completely disagree. It's not the best dynasty of all time. It's the best team of all time, right?
How is it not both?
Well, let's say it is both, okay? It's not just the 11 straight premierships. We talked about this. It was like the 28 straight years they made the final, was it?
Yes.
Yeah.
But this is what I was getting at, is the fact that there was no salary cap to even out the competition.
But there was the residency rule.
To a degree. The thing about that residency rule is if you came into the competition
mm-hmm.
with St. George, right, for example,
mm-hmm.
and you were a really good player, but you didn't want to play for St. George anymore
mm-hmm.
because you were a St. George junior, you had to ask the club to release you so that you could play for another team. And if they went, you're too good, we don't want to release you, you just didn't play football anymore.
And, I mean, that's a form of market. The only word I can come up with is manipulation.
That's exactly what it is. So that's what the whole Dennis Tuddy thing was over, because he was a test player for Balmain and he didn't want to play for him.
Yeah.
But they wouldn't let him go. So he just didn't play football for 2 years, and he had to take him to court to get out of that. And then for some weird reason, Stockholm syndrome, maybe, he went back.
Never go back to X.
That's it. I don't know what that was about.
But the thing is, so that was a form of, it wasn't like the Dragons, and they were one of the richest clubs at that time. It's probably them and Souths, maybe.
The Dragons were miles ahead of everyone.
Yeah, I mean,
because of the Taj Mahal.
Yeah. but it's not like the Dragons were picking the eyes out of every other club in the competition. Like,
oh no, they weren't doing that. What they were doing was they were taking some of the best talent from around the rest of New South Wales.
Yeah, and like, so but they all had to live in the St George district.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, Penrith don't have to worry about that. They can just sign whoever they want, and they can live wherever they want, really.
That's right. But what they are capped by is how much they can spend per season, just like every other club.
Yeah, but here's my point. Just like the Panthers, the Dragons had things that they had to work, but they had rules that they had to work by. They had limitations on who they could get, who they couldn't get, things like that. So I know they're different eras and they're different rules they have to abide by, but they did have different things that they had to navigate on top of becoming the best team in their era.
Yes. I'm not going to deny that. But I think the difference, though, is that the club had more control over players than what the clubs do now. The players have got the control now.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I would also say that man for man, good luck naming a team better than basically any of them Dragons teams. Like any of them, pick any of them.
Oh, absolutely. The Dragon sides were insane.
Yeah. So I just think it's crazy that that there was so much pushback from people about, but the Dragons this and the Dragons that. And it's like, what the fuck are these people talking about? This team won 11 in a row.
Well, but that's what I'm saying. Like, can you genuinely say that you think that this Panther side can win 6 straight premierships? Knowing that they've done half that journey already, do you think they can win 3 more in a row? Does that seem plausible in your head?
Last year, I would have said no way in the world. I didn't think that like 3 straight was plausible.
That's my point. That's what I'm getting at, is the fact that 3 straight is such an insane task. And they won that third one. But in doing so, they've now lost Crichton. And next year they'll have lost Luai. This is what happens with the game today, is that as a team gets more and more successful, other clubs start going, we want some of that success, so we're going to just start cherry picking your players from you. Whereas the Dragons didn't have to worry about that. We'll just give more money, because there's no threat of you can't do that. You're at the limit. We can go as far as the bank will say yes to, and that's the difference. And that's what I'm saying. Like the whole idea of playing, it's even nuts. The whole idea of being able to play in 6 straight grand finals, not even winning them all in the current game, is off the charts nuts.
Well, I think that one of the underrated things about the Panthers is they've played in 4 straight grand finals. Like, that's insane.
Yeah, I think even that Melbourne Storm side that cheated the cap by $1 million for a few seasons each did not manage to do what Penrith's done at the moment.
No,
they were cheating. Okay, I'm not saying Penrith are cheating. I'm just saying that's how hard it is. When you look at the roster that Melbourne Storm side had, and they had to cheat to get that roster to do that, and they, even when cheating, they couldn't achieve what Penrith has done now. And the fact that you can't sit there and say, yeah, I reckon Penrith can go 6 in a row, like without any hesitation whatsoever. You're like, that's what I'm saying. 6 now, 6 straight now. That's as nuts in your mind as what Dragons doing 11 back then is.
So how many would the Panthers have to win, right, in a row for you to say, let's say equal what the Dragons achieved in terms of the difficulty of their achievements?
If we're comparing purely with 11 straight premierships, then I would say 6. 6 is a minimum to be in that same conversation.
Look, if they won 6 in a row, I think they'd be clear. I mean, they'd be clear cut the second best team of all time for me.
they're pushed. They're definitely in that conversation. There's only two teams that would be statistically matching with them. I think they're both south sides, one from the 20s and one from the 50s.
Yeah. Like I
40s
think
and
that
50s.
I think currently the Panthers are in like a pretty large group that's behind the Dragons, and where they end up in that group, we will find over the next few years. Like if they don't win the next, say, 2 premierships, but win another one after that, or they don't play in the next 2 grand finals and then win another 2, like then we start to then they go beyond, say, what the Parramatta Eels did in the 80s and a few other teams back through history have.
If they can get to the grand final this year,
yeah,
irrespective of the result of that grand final, they will have then, I'm pretty certain, they've beaten what the Parramatta side did in the early 80s.
Yeah.
Which means the only team that there's had a similar grand final success rate and played in 5 straight premierships would be that Dragon side.
Yeah.
That's how close they're getting. It's.
Do you think that the majority of people realise what we're seeing right now? Like I didn't expect this to turn into let's talk about Penrith. I was focusing on the Dragons.
For 2 years we talked about the Tigers.
I know. And it's, what? It's been weird because if we haven't talked about the Tigers, we've kind of had to talk about what the Panthers are doing because it's like on this level that is historic. I don't know that people realise how historic it is though. Like you hear people talking about, oh yeah, they've won 3 straight. And yeah, but then you do the 4 grand finals and then you do the number of wins that they've had over the last 4 years. And you go down the list and, when they topped it off with the biggest comeback in grand final ever, I mean, it's really insane. And I don't know that people realise what they're seeing. I think a lot of people do, but I think that there's some people that are like, oh yeah, but they just barely got this one and this one was an intercept and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, do you realize what you're trying to talk down right now? And I saw that with that Dragons team when I posted that article about them, like people trying to talk down 11 straight premierships, which to me is just, it's impossible to do, but people trying.
For me, the 11 straight premierships is like it's off the charts. I don't think you're ever going to get anything that matches that.
No.
But basically the generation and a half of never missing the finals, fuck off.
Would it be like the Panthers would have to be in the finals into like the 40s, the 2040s?
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah. It's crazy.
I'll just say, to sort of show you, though, the one thing that the Dragons had to do in order to remain at the best is they had to be really good at spotting talent away from Sydney.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm looking at their 1961 squad, okay?
Okay.
So this is a team that won their 3rd, 4th, 5th straight title. So this is about halfway through their run.
Mm-hmm.
They've got Dave Brown from Newcastle, Bobby Bugden from Willumba, Brian Graham from Grafton, Johnny King from Gilgandra, Eddie Lumsden from Curry, Norm Proven from Urana, Kevin Ryan from Ipswich, Johnny Raper from Newcastle, Billy Smith from Fremantle. They're not getting guys who are locals. And that's another thing that's different is Penrith have a lot of local juniors that have come through.
Mm-hmm. But
The
they
Dragons,
do like Isaiah Yo's not a local.
No. But I mean, you look at back then.
Yeah.
It would not have been easy to be trawling around the whole country looking for people. That's someone from Fremantle, someone from Ipswich.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Without doubt, back then it must have been.
That's a hell of an achievement to get those people together.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it just shows that they had to go far and wide to build that squad.
Mm-hmm.
Penrith had to do theirs in-house more often than not. And that's, if you're going to be successful long-term, the Broncos showed it throughout the 90s, early 2000s. You've got to be able to have the talent at your feet, at your doorstep.
Yeah.
In the current game. You can't be constantly going around everywhere trying to cherry pick the best players everywhere and turn them into stars and expect that to constantly work every single year. You think the only person that's been able to achieve that to some degree is Craig Bellamy.
Yeah, he's just, well, his record is crazy in itself.
It is.
Yeah.
But he's brought through half a dozen people from the state that he's in over a decade.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. At most.
So you're looking at basically the results that Penrith are currently getting.
Yeah.
But having to do it in a way that Bellamy has had to operate. That's what St. George was doing. It's pretty nuts.
I tell you another thing that Penrith have going for them these days is a greater access to information and a much larger player pool, which does help.
Absolutely does. Good systems in place.
I just like for the Panthers for me as a Panthers fan, for them to beat the Dragons as the best team of all time. Personally, they have to win 12 straight. Like that.
Do you not take into consideration the fact that the seasons are longer?
I am. But nutrition's better. Nutrition's better. What else? Like travel.
That's fair. That's basically easier. What you're saying is if we're going to do this, we have to do it clean. Like it has to be categorically not be up for debate.
Yeah,
12 is more than 11. Simple as that.
100%. Yeah,
that's completely fine. I'm fine with that.
Okay, and I say that because like I look at the challenges both teams had, and teams throughout their entire history, or the entire history of the game, even you go back to the Parramatta Eels of the 80s, they had things they had to navigate as a club and as a team in the game at that time, which are different to the things that the Panthers have to navigate right now. And it doesn't make their achievement any greater than or less than what the Panthers are doing. It's just they had different things that they had to deal with in that moment. And that's the way I see it for all of these different teams.
Absolutely. I think that there's only been 2 occasions where a team has won 3 state premierships since that Dragons run.
Yeah.
Look, that's pretty nuts. That's over 60 years.
Yeah, it's insane. Look what if you had said to me, remember we did that podcast when the Panthers had a really bad loss, and I got on here and I was really drunk, and I was not happy about how they were playing, and like it was largely a lot of these players that are playing right now still. And if you had said to me, listen, they're going to be in 4 straight grand finals, I would have just laughed. If you had said they're going to win 3 of them, I would have said, no, that it's not possible. It really isn't possible. Andrew, you're toying with my emotions. Like, and they're going into this season, and like at the very worst, the biggest critic of the Panthers would look at their side and say, oh, they might be 4th, Like that's as bad as you could list them right now going into this season. I can't believe what we're seeing out of them. And I just think that the things that they're doing now are great for the moment that the past, what they did was great for the moments they were into, and they all had different dynamics they dealt with. And that's why I tend to go by the results. Hey.
It's always the best and tried and true method to go by.
Yeah. That's what I like to think. It'd be cool if there was a website where it had every single result of every single game played in the entire history of the National Rugby League and all of its forerunner competitions. Do you know of a website like that?
Oh, look, I've heard of one.
That'd be the best website ever.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll get in touch with them and see if they can give us a bit of a plug.
Speaking of ancient history, how about them Bears?
Oh, look, I want to say, right, off the top, I know we joke about this on a regular basis. I am sick to fucking death of constantly hearing about the Bears doing this or they want to do that or in a comeback. And there was an article coming out today saying, here are the caveats, basically, of what the Bears want if they're to come back, and going, now, listen here, cunts, all right? You don't fucking exist as an NRL team. Don't go throwing around your dick saying we're going to make sure that we're going to get what we want and we want this, we want that. You don't fucking exist in the NRL. You don't get to pick and choose how you get to exist. Either you get to or you don't. And right now, you're firmly in the don't category.
What did they say? What was their list?
They basically said, okay, if we're going to be involved in any way with a new team coming into the NRL, they must be known as the Bears. They must be wearing red and black. The logo must be a bear. There must be something like between 2 or 4 home games played at North Sydney Oval. It's like, who in their right mind, right? Take any emotion you've got for the North Sydney Bears out of it, right? I don't care if you name it, if it's Balmain or fucking Glebe or whoever, it doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
Who in their right mind would want to put in a bid that is going to be hamstrung by having to take games away from where they're based, because they're not going to be based in Sydney. There's not going to be putting any more teams in New South Wales, let alone Sydney.
No.
But they're going to be hamstrung and they have to play games at a cricket ground with a tree on it. That's basically what we know about North Sydney Oval these days.
It's got picket fences though. They're pretty modern.
Yeah. They were great in the 20s at Earl Park.
Don't you want to play rugby league in front of pavilions again?
Why not?
Like, we're old enough to remember when North Sydney were at one of their zeniths, right, in the 90s. And even back then, it was crazy that there was a club that played at a fucking cricket oval that looked like 1920s.
And look, can I just say, I think we can both agree that one of the worst teams historically over the entire history of the game is the Western Suburbs Magpies.
100%, yes.
They won twice as many premierships as the North Sydney Bears. Let that sink in, people. Right? And the Magpies, not directly, but indirectly, have money. Hence, they still exist to some extent in the NRL. Who the hell is going to be hamstrung by this mob who say, no, you've got to be all Bears and all this sort of stuff? What if a team that is absolutely perfect and ready to go from Perth comes along and says, we want to be known as the fucking Camels and we want to wear brown and green as our jumper and this is what we want to do? And they say, no, you can't come into the competition because some mob that doesn't exist wants to make sure that you have to wear red and black, you have to be called the Bears, and you want to have 4 of your 12 games every year played at a cricket ground in Sydney. Nowhere near Perth.
It's insane.
Why would we say yes to that? Why would any team say yes to that? If that's going to be the caveat that gets a new team in, is they have to be hamstrung with those limitations. We're not expanding the game anymore. That's retraction. That's just stupid. I hate the fact that they are trying to manipulate their way back into the game. I'm sick of hearing about them. I'm sick of this constant carry on. This is why people absolutely love the Newtown Jets, because they go, you know what? Fine. We accept that we just didn't have what it takes financially to compete in the NRL anymore. And that's because Sydney was an overflooded. It was an flooded market. We couldn't get in, and we found a way to get back in and be a prominent team in the New South Wales Cup, and they are doing some absolutely brilliant things there, and they have found their niche and they're fucking nailing it, and they are still a very loved club. And they don't go there saying, we want to be back doing this and doing that. And I'm sure they'd love to, but they're also realistic going, we know it's just not going to happen. But it doesn't stop us from being proud of what we've got, what we're building, and what we're going to continue building on here. And they're focused on the real world and the current existence that they have. Not this fairy tale thing where they think they can get back in and hamstring the competition of some new expansion team or sort of garbage. I'm sick of it. I absolutely. The thing that gets me about this is I am someone who's obviously I'm a historian. I'm a fucking traditionalist, but the Bears are making me hate them, and I hate that.
But what about all of their great players like David Fairley and Greg Florimo and Matt Sears and Jason Taylor and all this exact same people from the team in the 90s, because no one can name anybody else except when you go back to Chris McKivitt.
Duncan Thompson. Ken Irvine.
Oh, yeah, he played for them for about 5 minutes, didn't he?
No, he was there for most of his career. It's just... I don't like the way they're going about things. I don't like the way they're going to try and, I don't know, manipulate how the expansion works and try and get their way back in that way and piggyback off someone else's fortunes or something like that.
Do you reckon that there's money to be made by keeping this idea going?
No.
Well, why does it keep going then? Because it's stupid.
Because it's old hat people in the Sydney media and old hat fucking Sydney football players from the past who have still got a hard on about the Bears. And we know that PVL loves the media that he's talking to all the time. And so they keep pushing the idea to him and he keeps entertaining it. I will say this. PVL hasn't said he's going to bring them back. He's not said that he's open to the idea of them coming back. He's just been rather, I don't know, friendly, I guess, about it, saying, yeah, it'd be good to have them back. You know, they've got a fan base and a following. Got the numbers a bit wrong. So they had a fan base of 200,000 members or something like that.
Yeah, what the fuck?
Yeah, good one. But, you know, I generally don't think he's serious about it. I certainly fucking hope he isn't. But yeah, we've got to move on. And people got to realize that this is coming from someone who did support, you know, a team that existed in 1908 in Balmain, much more successful than North Sydney was.
Much more successful in the last decade of their existence than North Sydney was.
Well, played in more grand finals.
Yeah.
You know, it's just the whole landscape in Sydney has changed to the point where everyone needs to move on.
Yeah.
I mean, you could probably even argue that there may not have been enough culling of Sydney teams at the time, but we've found a way to coexist with all of that now.
Who would you get rid of right now? Be honest.
I think if we're going to be serious, we've got to be looking at areas where there might be a few teams close together. So East and South, Canterbury, Parramatta. And this is not anything to do with how those clubs are performing. It's all about the geography of Sydney. I just think that you only need one team out west. The South and the East teams are. Just put one team out there. And Canterbury Parramatta should just be another team in that central western sort of area. I think that would be the smartest way to run that whole area there. But I'm not saying that we need to cull anymore. It's obviously working as it is, so you can just leave it as it was. But, you know, that's probably what I'm assuming in the late 90s when they were starting to talk about unifying the leagues again. That's would have been an idea they would have had, was to try and cut down as hard as they could on the Sydney teams.
Yeah.
Well, they did pretty well, I guess, in the long run, as far as minimising the teams there.
It goes back to that old thing of like, you know, that they, in an ideal world, the idea was that you would have a team from the north, the south, the east, and the west. Now, I don't know that really lines up all that well with Sydney's actual geography.
Not really. I mean, some of the mergers they got right.
Yeah, some of them they did. Like, I think that and we've talked about this a million times, that MacArthur region, if the West Tigers just moved down their holus bolus, like, that's a whole giant area that is worthy of a club of its own. And then, like, you could give that Balmain area to one at, like, South. I think you've said before, give that area to South, or, even give it to Easts. Let Easts have something.
East and Balmain were looking at a merger at the very start when the merger talks were happening. That would have worked all right because you could have moved East sort of Balmain direction a little bit. They still have the home market would still be out in the east side there, but they'd be able to play a little bit more towards the Balmain area, which gets them in towards Homebush and stuff like that. So they'd have a venue there of their own. But that would have made sense. Or Balmain with Parramatta, or Balmain, Parramatta and Canterbury all joining up and having that central western team there. Canterbury and West to take over that southwestern part out there, Liverpool, MacArthur. Cronulla and Illawarra probably should have merged together with St George and just had everything from St George down to the south coast. And that could have been based in Wollongong too.
That would have been a ridiculously strong club.
Oh, absolutely. And it would have given South an opportunity to they could have merged with St George, or they could have just moved down a little bit further south, so they've got a bigger area. You want to try and get it so the teams start moving a little bit further and further apart, so they're not encroaching on one another and they're not sort of eating one another, I guess, so to speak, as far as development areas and stuff goes.
Yeah, true. I remember they talked a lot during the Super League war about Penrith and Parramatta should have merged, which, like, I'm sure sounds like a really good idea if you're in the eastern suburbs of Sydney, but would have been a disaster for the game overall if that had happened, because you would have had one club servicing, like, imagine a junior area. Like Penrith, I think you could literally cut their juniors in half and service two clubs out of. Well, imagine adding the Panthers and the Parramatta district together. Like, number one, you'd have a club that would be spitting out a lot of junior players and not being able to sign everyone. But there just wouldn't have been enough there wouldn't have been enough elite level positions for all those juniors to come through. And I think we would have lost a lot of talent.
That's right. That's why sort of Balmain, Parramatta, Canterbury as a merger would have made a bit more sense, and you could have moved them Liverpool way, so get a sort of a bigger sort of catchment, I guess, and get away from being sort of landlocked by all the other teams, the Bay. I think that's probably what the league would have been looking at doing back then, because in their mind, I'm hoping, well, I would have hoped at the time that they would have thought, if we can cull as many teams in Sydney as possible, we can put as much of our resources together to try and keep as many of the teams outside of New South Wales functioning.
Yeah.
And that would have been perfect. You could have had an Adelaide team, a Perth team. You could have had that second Brisbane team.
And I think in talking about all of this and what would have been in an ideal world where there weren't any consequences for these sorts of mergers and things like that, I think the reality at the time was that if you had said to the administrators, what will you take though? And they would have said, we'll take anything, man. Like, we'll take anyone merging with anyone else just to get less teams right now. We don't really care too much. We'll take anything.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think the St George Illawarra merge is a perfect example of it.
Yeah.
Imagine merging two teams together, knowing that there's one team that exists between the two of them.
Yeah, it's kind of strange.
It's not logical. But it was smart on St George's behalf. It was something they needed to do because it meant that they opened themselves up to that whole Wollongong catchment area, which is a brilliant idea.
Yeah, and it gave them a chance to market to a Sydney club and as a bit of a regional club, if you consider Wollongong to be a regional area, if you're going by the old city versus country sort of thing.
Oh, yeah, mate, it's country, mate. Haven't you seen the cows going down the main road in Wollongong?
I've been to Wollongong a few times. It's weird to travel so far and be in Wollongong and be like, man, this is like Dragons territory. And it really is. Like, it's Dragons territory. But it's so strange how far away it is from Dragons territory, like St George, you know?
That's right. That's crazy. Yeah. So. Yeah. I don't like the Bears talk.
Yeah.
I'm just over it now.
I agree with you. I'm the exact same. I think I've moved past the anger phase though. I've moved more into like, these fucking idiots again.
Yeah, I'm at the board.
Yeah.
And I'm sick of hearing about it now.
Yeah.
Can you please shut up and go away?
If the Newtown Jets started making the exact same noise, I think that you could actually get me far more invested in them coming back, and there's no realistic shot of them ever coming back unless they holus bolus went to a completely new city or something. But I think you could get me on board for Newtown Jets. I think you could get me on board for Glebe coming back before North Sydney. Yeah, have you ever been to Glebe?
I've been over the Glebe Bridge.
Yeah,
does that count?
Probably does, hey. It's a very small area. It's one of those tiny. It's one of those areas in Sydney where, like, if you drive a car through it of any decent proportion, you kind of feel like it's way too big for the road you're driving on.
It's one of those places when you're looking at, when you're visiting there and you're looking at your Google Maps and you're going, oh, we're in Glebe.
Yeah,
You look around and you go, oh, we're not anymore.
Yeah,
that really was nice.
It really is. It is a very small little place. It's kind of strange like that.
Yeah, and the crazy thing about it, I mean, as we said in the last episode, that history one is a very close-knit, passionate sporting area in the turn of the 20th century.
Yeah.
And just brilliant at every sport they tried their hand at. So, yeah, I don't know. I think some of these clubs just need to learn where their place is. That's all it is.
Yeah, same here. Look, I think that a perfect example of that is the St. Mary Saints, who are out here in the Penrith district. They've produced many international players, many state of origin players and things like that. And at the level that they compete at, they are a super strong club with more than a century of history behind them. And there's nothing wrong with them being at that level of the game and being that club. Like, it's amazing that they're that club.
How's about they merge with North Sydney? And then once the merge is completed, going, yeah, you know what? We're not going to change our colours or our logo or a mascot or our location, and we're not going to play any games at North Sydney Oval.
What type of filthy slut of a club would do that to North Sydney, Andrew?
Manly. Manly. Oh, keeping together.
I think it lasted 3 years, hey? I think it was 99 to 2002, and then it was all over.
Oh, God, it was a mess.
It was horrible.
It was a mess.
At least they got Matt Orford out of it, though.
I mean, it was basically the entire existence of the West Tigers condensed into 3 years. but surprisingly, with no wooden spoons.
Yeah. Oh, that's so funny because it's so true.
Oh, a mess.
Oh, that's great. By the way, our history episode, how cool was it getting all the positive feedback and the listener numbers were great for that episode?
Oh, it's been phenomenal, man. I've been neck deep in rugby league history stuff for the best part of the last 3 or 4 months. Not just for that episode. I was doing a lot of it was for that, but helping finalize the research on the NRL, New South Wales Rugby League NRL history on the Rugby League Project website. We've got that completed last year as well.
Mm-hmm.
So just buried in that for so long, and fucking loved it. And yeah. I've got to get back into it again and get the rest of that research finished so we can do our next history piece.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. I think that's my favorite episode that we've ever done. And there's been so many good ones that really stand out, but like that entire episode and, all of those great stories that were woven together and so many legendary people within the Sydney sporting scene back from that era. And, the formation of the game that we love. I mean, how can you not love that entire story? And I know you worked so hard on that, and it was something that, like you basically you were just like went away and did it, and then you were like, all right, I'm ready to do it, and we got stuck into it. It was
like
just so cool.
most of December, and right up until the day of recording on January. Yeah, because the thing I wanted to do with it, which I don't know if I mentioned on the episode or not, but I wanted to sort of convey it so it was you're kind of taken back to the moment, and you're hearing all of this breaking news that was coming in the whole time, because as you found with that, around July, August 1907, the amount of rumors and news and developments that came through every single day in that month was kind of like what it was like living through the Super League war, but just before Super League started. Oh, this person's signed there, or this club's going to come, and this is going to happen, and that person's that, and this and that, and then it's just constantly being fed rumors, facts, innuendo, and you don't know you don't know how to pick truth from fiction through the whole thing until after it happens. And I kind of wanted to get an idea of the chaos that the media was in, and also try and get an idea of the changing mindset of the players and some of the clubs during that whole period and why they were getting that way, and how quickly that movement took off once the New Zealand All Golds got to Australia.
Yeah, and I think you captured that really well, and like we've talked about this when the Super League war broke out, and obviously you lived out in the bush during that time because we were kids. And I've talked about how there was something about the Super League war that I took everything in, and I somehow, even though I was young, I kept a really good perspective of the fact that this is marketing, this is PR, this is a player that's just trying to get, like, I don't know why I was able to do that at such a young age, but I just was, and took everything in. And I think that's why I've got a really good perspective of what happened at that time. And like, even having lived through that moment, like I go back to when you talked about in the last episode that there was that week where, I think there was a rugby union in Australia said, like, unless they do something dramatic in the next week, I can't see a rugby competition getting up. And the most dramatic shit in Australia's sporting history happened in the next week. And rugby union has not recovered since in Australia. Like, and like you literally went through every day of that week of what was going on.
Oh, yeah. It's,
like, incredible.
It's absolutely fascinating. And I did have a few historians contact me saying, oh, you didn't mention this, you didn't mention that. And I said, no, I know. And some of it is because, like the conversation about the birth of the South Sydney Club, that didn't come from a newspaper article, but it was important to the story because it showed that there was movements going on outside of the central pillars that were talking, that formed the game, James Gilton and the like.
Yeah.
There were other clubs having these meetings away from that group, and they weren't talking about going fully professional. They were discussing the idea, and that was enough. That's the spark. If they're sitting there thinking about maybe we should change codes and go to the professional code, you've already won those people over. If they're thinking that already, they've already left the amateur code, and that's kind of why I put that in there. But there were other stories which, there's a lot of other stories and stuff that can go into all of that to make it a bit more of a thorough and in-depth sort of retelling of what went on back at the time. But I wanted to sort of capture the way the general public would have seen the whole thing unfold. So that's why I was going through the newspapers and doing it chronologically, to get an idea as to what the fans would have felt at the time, what they would have been reading about, and trying to see, I suppose, how they were being dictated to by the media. And it wasn't as subliminal as it is now. In some cases, obvious as it is now. But back then it was still it was aggressive.
It was, yeah. And I think the thing about that story is that, like, it's 1,000 tributaries flowing into one river, and then seeing where that river takes, and that river being the game of rugby league takes it.
Yeah.
And it's hard to focus on the droplets of water in that river. You kind of got to look at where the river ends up. And I think that you did that really well. And the thing that got me is that it wasn't just one central movement. It was like death by 1,000 cuts for many different people at very different levels of the sport of rugby in Sydney at that time. And I think that come through in it. And the other thing that come through was that at any time, if there had have been just some sort of realization by the rugby union authorities that this was happening and what the feeling was really like, and that as a rugby union administrator, you are earning money and you're saying the players cannot out of the game. And if you just move with the times just slightly, that's it. Like that, rugby league doesn't happen, and rugby union is the biggest sport in New South Wales and Queensland for the next century. And you basically go out of your way to do the worst possible things you can do at the worst possible times, and as a result, your sport gets completely dominated by a new code that you are the reason exists for the next century. Like, that is extraordinary.
Yeah, it reminds me of some of the threads that went on into all of that story. Remember in the 90s, those choose your own adventure books?
Yeah. I used to love them.
And every time rugby union came up with an option, they kept choosing the wrong one.
Yeah.
Because
every single time.
It was so easy for them to keep the players happy. And a lot of it wasn't about they wanted to be paid full time. They just wanted to be looked after so that they weren't going to struggle financially. That's all they wanted. So they weren't going to be earning an income. They just weren't going to be running at a financial loss, and that's all they wanted.
If you could have gone back to, some of those original meetings with those, people, it wasn't just players, it was administrators, it was referees, it was all sorts of people. If you could have gone back to those meetings that they were having and said to them, listen, I'm from the future. Do you want to know when rugby union decides that they will fairly compensate their players? And they will go, what? And I say, 1995. I would love to see their faces because at the time they must have thought, this is so obvious. Like, when we do this can't last for very long. Like, it must have been a little bit like Super League in the sense of like, look, there's going to be the competition's going to split in two, but it's not going to be for forever. We all knew that,
Yeah.
It's going to come back together, and it come back together after 1 year apart. But, at most it was going to last 2 or 3 years and something was going to happen. For them, if you had said, listen, they're not going to budge until 1995, it's like we laugh at it because it's so outrageously stupid. And yet that's exactly what happened.
So by then, your grandchildren will have grandchildren.
Yeah. It's really crazy.
Yeah, it was nuts. There's no doubt about it.
If you could have gone back to then and said, listen, we are going to land a man on the moon. And then about 40 years after that, the union will allow professionalism.
There will be 2 world wars.
Yeah, there will be 2 terrible world wars. First one was the war to end all war. Then 20 years later, there was one worse than that. We are going to split the atom and then go even further and create something that can create a natural disaster that wipes out entire cities. And then 60 years later, rugby union will be professional. Oh, shit.
It would be nuts.
North Sydney will win 2 premierships.
And then nothing for 70 years.
Then nothing. Then 80 years later.
Oh, yeah, it's crazy. It's
really
crazy. Yeah, no, that was pretty nuts. You know what? The other thing that was pretty nuts,
Mhm.
and I'm going to drag us into the present now,
Okay.
is the West Tigers finally said, bye-bye, David. And this has been the greatest off-season ever.
It must be. I can't imagine what it's like, because I know that there's been times when Phil Gould come in and he cleaned out the Panthers. It felt amazing just seeing that the fucking hangers on and the people that weren't accountable, they were gone. You still hear me? I'm still fucking angry about it. What's it been like for you? Tell me about it.
Just relief. Just really, and it's the funny thing, you know, you look ahead to 2024, and to be honest, the Tigers are going to be one of the bottom 3 teams past that.
Yeah,
I'm fine with that, because I know that they've taken the first step in the right direction for the first time in over a decade.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw some people on social media, Facebook and on Twitter, saying things along the lines of, oh, you know, it's too much change all in one go. I was like, no. The only way when you're in this situation, the only way to solve this is all the change all at once.
And we've rarely seen for a club where literally everything did need changed. Like from top to bottom, every single thing needed changed. And the West Tigers, I think we saw it at Canterbury to a certain extent. We even saw it up in Newcastle as well. Newcastle, it was a little bit more organic. Canterbury, it was ripping the Band-Aid off. And this has even been more dramatic than what Canterbury did.
Yeah, this is basically taking a scythe to a tumour.
Yeah.
And then hacking at it.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it needed to be hacked at because the roots on it was so deep.
And nothing could be left. There could be nothing left. No. So that was good that nothing was left, because I think that was the thing that was the biggest worry for me, is that somebody would keep their job. And I'm not talking about Benji, because it was Benji Marshall was never the problem.
Has any coach ever been thrown into a worse situation in their entire career?
No, I can't think of anyone even close.
Because this is insane. He was supposed to be getting a traineeship for 2 years under Tim Sheens, and he hightailed it after 6 months.
Yeah.
And Benji's left with his team that's won 2 straight spoons and a atrocious board all around him. They then had a drama with his recruitment person who was just rogue.
Yeah, that was weird, that situation.
It's like the club was in a situation where they had to go, you know what, do we support the coach or do we support this other rogue bloke who's just coming and doing whatever he wants? And thankfully, a independent board came along and says, here's what we're going to do. All of you, fuck off.
Yeah.
So they got rid of Fulton, the rogue recruitment guy, and that was a good move because he's not great. He's just not. So they got rid of him. They got rid of Justin Pascoe. And the only time I'll ever give him any praise is that he got the ass and he hasn't been whining or moaning about it. He's just fucked off.
Yeah.
And that's the only thing I can give him credit for. He realised that his time was done and he's just gone, fine, fair enough, I'm done. And he's gone. Then we've got Chairman Lee. This fucking prick. He's still bitching and whining and moaning and whining in the fucking media. Didn't treat me with respect. Lee, I'll just say this to you. You didn't deserve any respect. You're a fucking cunt. Fuck off. I've had enough of you. Stop talking in the media. Just piss off. You've got money to your eyeballs. You've got a business you can go and run. Just go and buy another hat and fuck off. Seriously. I don't want to hear any more of your bullshit, man. No one cares. Have a look in the fucking room, man. Have a look in social media. See how many people want you back. See how many people are crying about your dismissal. No one cares. Fuck off. We don't want you back at the club. You are a cancer to this club. You tried to hold them ransom by saying, "Oh, we'll take our sponsorship money with us." You know what? Take it. Take it. If Cronulla could find a sponsor, I know I said this before, if Cronulla could find a sponsor after they started bullshit, we can find one after you've departed. Seriously.
Yeah.
No club's gone through as much media sandbagging and bullshit than what the Sharks went through. And I'm not criticizing the media over that. The Sharks deserved it for what they did there. You shouldn't be putting your players at that sort of risk. And all for cheating and to get no result out of that cheating while doing it. That's just stupid. I hate that. I hate the poor treatment of players that they did back then. But they came back after that. They got sponsors and they're fine and they've moved on. And they went through all of that. And the Tigers were still shit before that happened to the Sharks, after that happened to the Sharks, and 7 more years after the Sharks actually bounced back and won a premiership. We were still getting worse.
Well, put it into perspective. Like, the Tigers were a terrible team before Nathan Tinkler bought the Knights.
Yeah.
Like,
every goddamn team that's been trashed to some extent, and nearly all of them have had a period where they've just gone, you know, we need to just bottom out for a year or two and get shit reset. And nearly all of them made the finals within 3 or 4 years after getting the spoon or having a bad year, except the Tigers.
Yeah.
They just stayed crap and got worse. That's the thing. They got worse.
How excited are you to know that you've got Luai coming up in 2025 and he's going to be at the club like properly long term?
I don't know. This is going to be probably a bit of a surprise. I'm not that overly excited about him being there. It's not because of him. It's because this is the first time the Tigers are in a position where they might actually start moving in the right direction as a club. And to me, that's a bigger story than Luai coming over.
I completely understand what you mean by that. And I think that's the right way to feel about it. Because I think the worry for me is that, and I understand that Tigers fans are really excited right now just by the fact that their team is just out from underneath that horrible management. I'm worried about the pressure that will be on Benji Marshall to get instant results, and they are not going to happen. They just aren't. And getting Luai is a good first step in the right direction, but he's still going to be a star player in a team that's not going to be very good even in 2025. And I think that the expectation needs to be really looked at a little bit, because I mean it's almost as rock bottom as you can get. I think Canterbury's rock bottom in terms of the playing staff that has been left behind there is worse than the Tigers situation. But I tell you what, the Tigers aren't a great deal ahead of that.
No. And look, I actually would be concerned if the Tigers went and had really sharp success really quickly. I kind of want to see them have consistent improvement.
Yeah.
So if every year they went 2 or 3 positions higher on the ladder than where they currently were the year before, to me that would be a better thing that they're doing, because they've still got some player contracts that they're probably going to run out. I don't think they're going to renew a lot of them.
Yeah. I think there's going to be a couple of pretty handy players that they're going to lose just because of the hangover of things, and there's going to be some good players that are going to be there that are not going to want to stick around for the rebuild, and that just happens. Like I think back when the Panthers lost Michael Jennings, you know, it would have been really cool to rebuild the team around him, but couldn't hold on to him. Luke Lewis was another one. There's going to be players that are going to leave the Tigers like that, and it's going to be like, man, I wish we could have kept that dude. And they're going to be really good at other clubs, but it's going to be part of the process. And I think Tigers fans need to be ready for that.
Yeah, and look, they've got between this year and next year a lot of players coming off contract. So if they can get some improvement on the field, and it doesn't have to be wins, okay? The one thing they could do that would be the biggest improvement of all is to be more consistent defensively, because that's something they've always struggled with. And if they start producing good defense, so they're not getting flogged anymore. I don't want to see them getting 50 put on anymore. You know, that shit's got to end. So if they can put a stop to that, the wins will come very quickly after that. The focus needs to be defensively, though. So the signings that they have been making have been focusing mostly on the middle defense, that's a brilliant idea. It's what they should have been doing all along. And Luai's addition for me is more about improving that defense more so than the attack, because he's a very strong defender. He's going to be on the edge. He does hold his side of the defensive line together reasonably well.
Yeah.
That's what you want. Caesar is also a very good communicator in defense as well. And we can make comments about how good he might be in attack, but the one thing he provides is good communication on the line in defense. He may not be the best defender himself as far as, stop and tackles one-on-one. He's a halfback. They're not going to.
Yeah.
But if he can keep the structure in place, they're going to be harder to score against. And what you end up having then is teams that have to try and score in your corners, which means they're scoring 4 points at a time, not 6. That helps. That helps so goddamn much. And it means you stay in games for longer. And then that means that people like Luai can work a little bit of magic. They've only got to do it two or three times a game to create, one or two opportunities, and you just stay in games longer. And constantly staying in games is what builds confidence and what keeps you in games. It stops you from being disrespected and manhandled, and teams start changing the way they approach you.
Yeah, and it's interesting when you see a team develop from a pretty low point, and when you start to see that change because I think the first change you normally see is they don't fold, and bad teams fold, and it's all over. And that point in the game where it's like, oh, well, the game's over and we're going to get 30 put on us now, or we're going to get 40 put on us now. And when you see your team stop folding like that, it's like, you know what, they lost, but they only lost by like 16 points. It's not even a huge, result, but they didn't fold. They could have lost by 20 or 30, but they didn't. And then they stick with the team and they make them really beat them. And we even saw that out of the Brisbane Broncos once Kevin Walters took them over. I mean, they played a couple of really good games against the Panthers where the Panthers had to fucking play really well to beat them. And you think of like how quick they went from that point to all of a sudden they're up by fucking 18 points in the grand final. It happens quickly.
That's right.
And it's going to be fun for West Tigers fans to see, but they've got to be ready for the process. It's not going to change overnight.
No, I'll be honest. I don't think many people are like of the legit serious Tigers fans who are not morons.
Yeah.
There are some of them out there. Yeah. They're thinking, look, if we can finish 12, 13, 14, somewhere around there, that's a huge improvement. I don't think they'll go that high up.
No.
I'm thinking 14, 15, somewhere around there might be where they might peak at. But I think they'll also be comfortably clear of whoever's going to finish last. I don't think it's going to be one win between where the Tigers are and where last is. It's probably going to be 2 or 3 wins, or probably even 4, but it'll be 4 at the most. The Tigers should be looking at having
the Dragons last year.
Oh God, yeah. Yeah, that team looks bad.
They really do. I think that
we can be critical of that coach, and we are. Trust me.
Mm-hmm.
But if we take away all of that, all of his, all the facts about him as far as what he does and how he runs things and what he's done in the past, right? And just look at how the style he uses when he coaches, right? He has a style that is entirely based on working off the middle defense of the forwards.
Mm-hmm.
That's all it ever was. You have a look when he had the Sharks there, and everything was about having ball playing forward. So all the attack was generated by your defenders. You had Gallen, Wade Graham, Luke Lewis, Andrew Fafita, all brilliant ball players, all playing in the middle and just on the edge of the ruck. Who was their halfback? Chad Townsend. You don't need to have a brilliantly skilled halfback. If you've got 4 genuinely very talented ball players in the middle and just on the edge of the ruck, and they're doing hit-ups and then getting crazy offloads away, all you need is, good outside backs. That's basically what they did. They didn't have brilliant halves, and when they did have good halves, they just went that little extra further. So knowing that that's what he's always worked off and what he's always relied on for, how his teams get successful, you look at what St. George has at the moment, what the Dragons are at the moment, and they don't have that. So I don't know how he's going to get what he's constructing there squad-wise, how he's going to get that to work, because he doesn't have that powerful line-running middle forward. He doesn't have those 2 skillful second rowers with good ball skills. No one's got Luke Lewis because that bloke would run lines like nobody else. No one's got Wade Graham. He's a 5'8" in a second rower's body, and he's got no fucking care for his own well-being. That guy was nuts. And so you look at that Dragons forward pack, knowing what Flanagan needs out of his forwards to be successful, and you just look at them and go, they're not close to what he wants.
No. Like in that whole club, the only players I would look at and say, I want that guy and that guy, it's like Hunt and McNuggets, because he's still a fantastic player. He played really well in a bad team last year, which was.
And the crazy thing about the Dragons is he did have a great season, yet their attack is all focused on going to Lomax.
Yeah. Like I don't rate Lomax. I think I've said that before. I think he's built a very good combination with Ravalawa. There's no doubt about it, because Ravalawa is a good player. He's another good player. He's handy. You could put say he went to Parramatta, for instance. He'd be really good for Parramatta.
Absolutely. But Lomax has built a really good relationship with him, and they got a good teamwork out on that edge there, because between those 2 players and the fullback, I think they scored something like a third of, or maybe even more, of the Dragons' tries and points last year.
Yeah.
Which is just insanely high number. It just shows that their attack is always targeted on going to Lomax. And Lomax has got a good way of, if he doesn't score himself, he's able to get the ball to Ravalawa, who can score, or he can get it on the inside to the fullback, who can score. But when your attack is so intensely located on one area of the field, you become very easy to defend against. And Flanagan has shown that he's not the sort of coach to come up with brilliant game plan ideas in attack.
Yeah. He's a grinder coach.
Exactly. And
I think Lomax is the St. George Illawarra Dragons Norfoluma.
I rate him above Nofaluma, but Let's be honest, I rate Nofaluma pretty low.
Yeah. Like, I think where I rate Nofaluma, and it's higher than what you rate him, and it's not very good. No. Like when he started up in the off season, and I was like, this fucking guy. And I started talking about how he should be looking for places to live in Wakefield for when he signs for the Wildcats in First Division over in England. He hasn't signed anywhere yet, has he?
I don't believe so.
Yeah.
No, he's just been released.
Yeah. How many really good wingers do you reckon would just be released and not have a club still at this point?
Not many. And look, to be honest, most wingers can go over to England. If they don't get into the Super League, they'll get into Championship or, at worst, League One, where they'll be a fullback or a winger.
Yeah.
No one's chasing Nofaluma.
No, it's weird. It's weird.
It's because he's got this obscene attitude about how good he thinks he is, how it doesn't level up with reality. Like he genuinely thinks he's a lot better than what he really is. And it's all because he had one good season a few years back and people saying, oh, maybe you should be in conversation for the Origin side.
Yeah, and that was silly. I mean, that was so silly. And the other thing is too, like, I can understand where as a player you could, because he's their top try scorer in the history of the club, which, let's face it, like it's when you look at the wingers the West Tigers have, I think I'm third on the list. Like, it's not a very good list, right?
No.
But I can see where a player is scoring tries and you're the top try scorer in the club's, history, and you've been there longer than a lot of guys that are at the club, but you're still young. And you have got them little whispers that you heard a few years ago about playing Origin and stuff. And I can see where you get the wrong idea about where you are in the game. And so part of me doesn't even blame him, but it wasn't aligned with the reality of how important he was and was not to the club.
Let's be real about it, okay? 11 seasons he's had at the West Tigers. He scored exactly 100 tries.
Yeah.
The next two closest to him were Chris Lawrence, who played, 7 games in his last 4 years because, he was just randomly hit by a bus and then a fucking plane fell on him one year.
Mm-hmm.
Unlike
and that was on the good days.
That was on the good days. And he played for 15 seasons, had 84 tries.
Yeah.
Benji Marshall, 84 tries. He was in the halves.
Yeah.
He's only got 16 tries more than them. Robbie Farah, 68 fucking tries. I mean, let's be honest though. Robbie Farah is the highest try scoring hooker of all time in the game's existence, though. But still, Nofaluma has only scored 32 tries more than a hooker in 11 seasons. He just needs to pipe down a little bit. You're not that fucking good. I'll tell you one other stat that's really interesting about David Nofaluma.
Okay.
Do you know how many first grade games he's played in the NRL?
In 11, he's played 11 seasons, but you get a couple of seasons there where you get injuries. Your first season, you don't normally play all the games. I'm going to say 211.
198.
Okay.
What a shame. What a shame.
Close. We got close. You know what? The list of players that have played 200 games for the West Tigers, have you got that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I've got that.
I feel like that'll read like...
I'll tell you now. There's 4 players on that list.
Okay, can I guess them?
Go for it.
Robbie Farah.
I was going to say, I think I mentioned nearly all of them.
Yeah, Robbie Farah, Benji Marshall.
They're the top 2.
It's got to be Chris Lawrence.
Yep, he's third.
And the last one's going to be difficult for me.
Still playing in the NRL today.
Oh, really?
But not at the Tigers.
Oh, man. Oh, it's Luke Brooks.
Luke Brooks.
Yeah.
So Farah's got 260, Benji 251, Chris Lawrence 234, and Luke Brooks 202.
It's weird how some clubs I was thinking about this today randomly, right? How some clubs don't have players that have played 300 games for them. Like, I don't know that Penrith has a 300 gamer, do they?
Oh, the crazy thing is South Sydney didn't have one until John Sutton.
Yeah, that was another one that I was thinking of, where it's like, how is that even possible that they didn't have that over 100 plus years of history?
Well, a lot of it comes down to the fact that their period of success is when the seasons were so much shorter.
Yeah.
And when the teams that seem to have the players who played 300 games for them are teams that have been successful in the 1990s beyond period, because that's when the seasons are 22 games minimum.
Touching into the 80s with a few players as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's going to be your more modern players that are on that 300 player list.
There was just on a bit of a tact from that, there was a directive that come out, I think it was during this week actually, where they were going to, in an effort to reduce concussions, they were going to change the way that players were training in the off season, and they were going to cut down on I guess collisions that happen in training.
Yes.
And I don't know how many collisions actually happen in the off season in training. I think for the most part, they have players doing weights and just physically stopping them from getting, outrageously overweight in the off season, which is really easy for a big dude to do when all of a sudden the physical activity of the regular season finishes. If they don't start eating smaller meals and things like that. And there are players that can go away in the off season, which is very small for them these days, what you call an off season. Like they're only away from their clubs for a couple of weeks really, and come back and they're carrying a bit of weight. Some dudes can burn it off really quickly. Other dudes, it takes them like months and months to get back into shape. And I think these days they just kind of keep the players training full time so that they don't lose their conditioning. So I don't know how many collisions are really happening in, like even now at this point in the pre-season, I don't think you're seeing teams blast on one another on the training paddock. So I don't know how much of a difference that's going to make.
Look, anytime you can reduce the amount of head clashes, though, that sort of thing, even the whiplash effect in some of the tackles and stuff like that, it's going to be a good thing for the brain health of players.
Yeah.
So
there were people that were lining it up to the similar rules that are in place in the NFL. They did this about, I think it was 5 or 6 years ago. They changed the way that teams trained and trying to cut down on the head injuries, or not head injuries, but just head impacts that were happening in training. But the way that an NFL team trains is extremely different, believe it or not, than a rugby league team. Like if you think of how you train an offensive and a defensive line in an NFL preseason, the first thing they do is they headbutt each other in the collisions.
Yeah, they're wearing those bloody helmets as well, which is not great.
Nah, look, I was looking at a video a few weeks ago of the worst impacts in the NFL in the last season. I don't know if it was this season that is just about to wrap up in the Super Bowl. I think it might have been the regular season. I'm not real sure. But the way that players lead with their heads and the way they tackle with their heads and the way they run with their head down, bracing themselves with their head for the collision, it's completely different to rugby league. And we've talked about this a lot on the podcast. And so I think when people line up what the NFL is doing with what happens in rugby league, it is so completely different. And I worry that it would be really easy for the authorities in the NRL, in an effort to make sure that they look good in the media, just say, oh yeah, we'll do what the NFL does, when what the NFL does is not what rugby league needs, because it's a completely different sport with completely different collision dynamics.
Yeah, and look, the problem with the helmets, it's not the actual helmet themselves, it's the mindset a player gets when they put the helmet on, that their head is now fully protected, so I can now use this as a weapon. And that's just not the case. But that's why they do that. That's why you may find some people in rugby league think that headgear helps, and it doesn't. It adds this attitude that your head is now protected, so it doesn't matter if it gets bumped. And that's not the case. That's the problem you get with these helmets and the headgear and stuff like that. They offer absolutely no genuine support to the brain at all. It's impossible to. The only way you can support the brain from head knocks is to put the helmet inside your skull around your brain. And you can't do that.
No. Look, I've played in full gridiron kit before. And you just think you can't get hurt, because for like having played footy like rugby league, and then you pad it up, it's like, well, I can't get hurt in this thing. Like, it's not possible. And so you just chuck yourself. You just chuck your body mass at another person, and they just chuck their body mass at you. And when you watch tackles in the NFL, like that's basically what a lot of their tackling is hitting your body mass against their body mass. There's not huge amounts of technique in their tackling.
No, that's right.
When you do see good tackling technique in the NFL, it really stands out to you. And you're like, oh, yeah, that would be a good tackle in rugby league as well. But most of it is just your body mass hitting their body mass and trying to knock them over and wrap them up at the same time. And so I think that two different dynamics need to be remembered by the people that are making rules that are going to change the way rugby league is played and the way that players train. Because as I said, I don't think that they're trained. Like, I think if you went back to the 80s, you would see teams smashing each other and smashing their own teammates in the preseason to get ready. I don't think that's happened for, well over a decade now in the NRL. I just think it's not a concern.
Well, speaking of things that are a concern in off-season, there's a case before the courts at the moment about the death of is it Keith Titmus, the Manly player?
Yeah.
He died during a Manly preseason one day, and there was a report coming out that said that they were doing excessively high volumes of training out in 40-degree heat one day, and his heart rate was elevated like crazy, and his body temperature was through the roof. And if that's true, that's bloody alarming.
It is, and that seems like it's well out of the scope of what you would see from a club that's monitoring everyone. These players would be training. Like, I just don't know how someone could slip through the cracks like that. I understand that every so often in sport, unfortunately, we'll get an athlete that dies, on the field or on the training paddock, and it can be through heart failure that just comes out of nowhere, and it's terrible when that happens. I know LeBron James's son, not too long ago, he had a similar situation happen where he went into cardiac arrest playing basketball, and luckily they worked straight onto it, and he's fine now. They managed to save him, but like, sometimes players just die like that, and it's really scary. But some of the stuff that I've read about in this situation, it's like you say, it's alarming, and it feels like it's stuff that should have been picked up.
Yeah, I get that some coaches want to push their players as hard as possible, and it's understandable why too, because the results come with that.
Yeah.
But fucking hell, who goes, you've got to draw a line somewhere. And thrashing blokes in the middle of summer in 40-degree heat is just, I don't know. That's especially in this fully professional version of the game. Surely some sort of workplace safety thing comes into play at some point.
Well,
that's ridiculous.
And you would think that with the monitoring that they can do in real time of players, and as you say, it's like, they can monitor everything from a player right now. In real time, it's amazing, really. And I think that there's also the thing of training to failure. I know there's a train of thought that when you train, and I don't mean in this situation in that the poor man passed away, but just in general, that if you say do weight training until you can't physically lift weights anymore, or you lift weights that are just so heavy you can only do a few reps with, it's not as good as training weights that you can lift a lot of reps with and control the weights. Yeah. And it's a similar thing with running. Like, if you're running until you can't run anymore and you're stuffed, it's different from doing a training session when you run and you're in control of the way you're running and your running technique and stuff. The training to that point where, you're completely stuffed, there is a train of thought that that's not the way to do it. And I understand that there are training sessions that every team has where everyone gets flogged. They just are. We know that. But there does need to be a duty of care where if you've got someone that's in real distress and they're on the verge of having a medical episode, you should fucking know about that.
Well, even in the case of, don't take the players outside when it's 40 degrees. You can still do training in a gym or something like that. There's a bit of aircon going on, so they can still be getting maximum exercise, but be in some sort of comfort.
Mm-hmm.
What are you going to go take them running in 40-degree heat for? That just seems nonsense.
Yeah. Yeah, I think
I don't even know what sort of athletic improvement you get out of doing that.
Well, there's a point where you stop getting gains and you're starting to break down the human body.
Yeah.
You know? And that's some of the idea of, you don't train to failure. You don't train until you start breaking your body down. And I would have hoped that clubs were really on top of that. And
had been for a lot longer before this happened.
Well, I thought, because it's when I was reading about the things that were happening, and when this young man passed away, I remember thinking how sad it was at the time. But the effect it must have had on his teammates, and then like the coaching staff, and and that's obviously his family and friends must have been just completely devastated. But everyone around the whole situation, it's got to look after players better than that, man. It's horrible.
Absolutely. What else has been going on? Oh, there's been some rule changes.
Yeah, just for a change, hey.
I mean, you've got to have it every year, haven't you? It's the you got to have the daily M's, and then you got to have the rule changes.
The rule changes, yeah. Well, they changed the rules for how line dropouts are governed, I guess. So, and it's been a while since I've read the rule changes, but basically what you're going to see from now on are teams absolutely, from a line dropout, they're absolutely going to boot the shit out of the ball at the sideline, because there is really no incentive to not do that.
Yeah. I don't get some of I think what they're thinking was, from what I could gather, was if we got them doing short dropouts on a more regular basis, then the physical contact between the attacking team and the team that's defending, we'll call the attacking team the one that receives the ball.
Mm-hmm.
The chance of there being a long run into a hit up is greatly reduced because the players are all going to be much closer together.
Yeah.
So maybe that might help reduce the amount of concussions. I'm not sure that the science is going to back that up, but I think that might be what they're thinking in their own heads. So if we can have them all playing constantly 20 meters apart from one another, there'll be no more head knocks. I think that's what in their mind is what they're working on there, because I can't see any other reason why you do this.
No, neither can I. And I think that comes back to the NFL changed their rules on how they kick the ball off. And they changed it to a point where basically, and if you know the NFL, basically if you kick the ball off and a player can catch it in their in-goal area, it just becomes what we would call a 20-meter tap, basically. So there's no running the ball back, and they got it to a point where it's basically kickoffs are just stupid in the NFL now. I think that this is the first step towards what we're going to see in rugby league, where they're going to do a similar thing where maybe you just start the game by tapping it at halfway to start the match rather than having to kick off, because the idea that the few dropouts that we see where a team runs it back are going to change anything. Like, I just think that's silly.
So I'll go through some of the rule changes. I finally found a list of them all.
Okay.
So stopping players from advancing downtown on kicks. Removing players from standing in the rucks to keep markers out of play.
That's always been a rule.
Yeah. The rugby maul driver-like tackle is being banned.
Do you know what the fuck that means?
So that'd be where you've got you might have two players in a tackle, and a player's been pushed backwards already in that tackle, and then another defender comes in to push them back even further.
Referee calls held anyway on that. So
yeah. So I think what'll happen is there'll be a penalty if that third person joins that tackle while it's already moving backwards. I'm assuming that's what it means, because again, that could lead to heads being banged against the ground. Yeah, I don't know if that's a huge issue, that one.
No.
Trying to stop players who are being held upright in tackles having another player come in and lift their leg.
That's a rule right now anyway.
Yeah, it's
Like they call, as soon as you lift a player's leg off the ground, they call held immediately.
yeah.
So I don't understand why that's there. I mean, that's the rule now.
Players who jump to retrieve a bounced ball will receive greater protection. So I dare say they'll be getting the same protection that a player gets when they jump to catch a bomb.
Yeah, that's fair.
More emphasis on 10 meters and ruck infringements.
It's almost like they're going to apply the rules we've already got, hey?
Well, that's kind of like the rule that fell away when they got rid of the second ref.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, the reason why we brought the referee in was because those two things were being exploited.
Yeah.
And I mean, imagine my surprise that they started getting exploited again when we took the second ref off the field. And now they've realised, I wonder why that's gone bad. They're getting there. And the last one is not being as strict on deliberate knock-ons. And this sounds weird at first, but upon looking into it further, I think what this is about is when players juggle the ball when they've caught a pass or something like that. They juggle it, but they juggle forward. They've still seemingly got some form of control because they're trying to juggle it into their hands in a safe position, but they're tapping it forward to do it. So long as it's not a blatant thing where, they throw the ball over a player's head that's coming to them and then they catch it as they go forward, because that's obviously wrong. Or they're just tapping it constantly so they don't get tackled. If it's in the process of trying to regain possession, then I think they're going to be allowed to try and regain the possession before they get ruled for a knock-on.
I honestly think in my entire lifetime of watching rugby league, I have seen that rule applied a little bit too harshly twice.
Yeah. The other one I think it might be is when a player might touch a ball, like it might graze their thumb, and then hit a defender on the chest, and then it comes back into the first player's hands. And that's always regarded as a knock-on. So that might also change as well in that regard, because they have been getting pretty full on with that one.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Because some of those are not, look, they're being regarded as a deliberate knock-on, even though it's probably not even a pass intended for someone. And yeah, it might have just grazed their skin. It's not really deliberate, is it?
Well,
but it's been treated as one.
I guess you could look at a situation where, let's say an attacking player goes up for a bomb, and they get possession of it, but the way they get possession of it is by forcing the ball into the defending player. But they've always had possession of it. Yes. But that could be looked at as a knock-on.
Yep.
Hopefully that's the sort of situation, because I like I said, my entire lifetime, I reckon I've seen twice where a player has, batted the ball forward and regathered and say scored a try or something, and they say, no, that was a deliberate knock forward. In fact, in my whole life, I reckon I've seen a deliberate knock forward called less than 10 times.
Yeah. You know what? The crazy thing is I've seen a deliberate knock forward less than I've seen a voluntary tackle made. And that's where a player just full flops on the ground on the ball and just stays there until someone touches them. That was always a penalty.
Yeah.
And now that is just completely allowed. I'd like to see that changed.
Yeah, hundreds of times more. Yeah. 100%.
So no, if you fall on the ball and someone touches you, that's not a tackle. You have to get onto your feet and you have to be tackled to the ground. You can't just fall on it and just lie there.
Yeah.
Or you're allowed to have the ball stripped off you one-on-one if you're just lying there on the ball.
That's why I like it when a player is lying on the ground in a voluntary tackle and someone comes in and just obliterates them. To me, there's something about in my rugby league soul that's like, you fucking deserve that, you cunt.
I don't mind it so long as they don't go near the fucking head.
True. Yeah, 100%.
Because I agree 100%. I've seen a few times where I think one of them might have been Sam Burgess on a West Tigers player many years ago.
Yeah.
And the Tigers player was on the ground and Sam Burgess come in and just, they do that thing where they just launch the shoulder at you and they have their arm sort of trailing behind them.
Yeah.
And he did that and he hit the Tigers player around the shoulder and head. I was just like, you could have just belted him anywhere else and made your point. Like, what do you got to hit the head for?
You hit him in the head, yeah. The thing that gets me is that people get really fucking pissed off when players do that. And it's a completely, not when you hit him in the head, like you said, but when you tackle someone that's on the ground and you blast them, that's a completely legal play. And people get really angry when they see it for some reason.
Yeah, they seem to think it's a dog shot.
Yeah, they do.
Well, hang on, the player's done a dog act by not getting to their feet and playing like an actual player. They're taking the weak way out.
That's why I liked it last year when, remember Reece Walsh got blasted by, it might have been Big Tino in a game. And his reaction was he laughed because he was like, he fucking got me. Damn it. And I love that.
Yeah. That's what they deserve.
Yeah, you do. You stay on the ground, you're going to get blasted, man. And like, I love it.
So those are the, I wouldn't say they're rule changes. They're more areas that they're going to focus on.
They're Graham Annesley wanting to put his name on something.
Well, he hasn't been. He's been out of the media for a while, isn't it? His Monday sessions.
Yeah, I know.
No one's seen his watch for a while. You know,
he's getting toey.
He is. He's getting toey. Getting excited for the start of the year. Oh man.
Did you see the magnificent plans of Penrith's brand new football stadium? $300 million palace that they're building.
Yeah, they're going to put like 3 extra nails in the roof.
Yeah, it's going to be good.
Fantastic.
It's going to be good. Fantastic. They're going to add like 2,500 more seats. So $300 million bucks. $300 million bucks.
Wow, it's like $100,000 for a seat.
Yeah, it is. I think somebody calculated it was like $123,000 per extra seat. It's good stuff. And
can I just say,
yeah,
the Panthers have a perfect opportunity to bring someone back to the club to save them some cash and stretch that dollars a bit further.
Who?
It's someone who we both knows where you can find some cheap chairs.
To be
T-Baz.
Yeah, to be fair, he can get it for $20 each.
Yeah. Just pop down to Bunnings. He'll get a bunch of chairs. I mean, he'll have that ground. It'll have 300,000 chairs in it.
Isn't it crazy though that for $300 million, you get a stadium which is going to look almost the exact same, right? They're going to do the east and the western stand again, but it's going to have only a couple of thousand more seats. It's still going to have the 2 grass hills at either side, and that's it for $300 million fucking dollars.
You know what's crazy about that?
Mm.
Is $300 million is what it cost to build CommBank Stadium.
Well, I feel like CommBank was $350.
Well, you know.
That $50 million though, they got a roof out of it, 2 enclosed ends. Like
they stretched that last 50 million out hard.
Yeah, they fucking budgeted that. It is crazy. You know what the fuck up is that everyone dragged their feet. They got the commitment for the 300 million, and everyone started saying, "Oh, yeah, maybe we should do that. What the Paceway wants in on this? Let's move to the Paceway. No, let's not move to the Paceway. Let's build it here. And all of a sudden, you get to a point where inflation has kicked in, all the costs have risen for everything, and now you're going to have to build a stadium on a budget where $300 million gets you fucking half a. It's going to be a
lick of paint and 20 seats.
Seriously, it's silly. It's fucking insane. And the other thing is too, like, why not use the 300 million to build 2 new stands at either end? Like, you could enclose that stadium just about for $300 million. But no, we're going to tear down what we've got, rebuild basically the same thing again. It's going to cost $300 million. It's fucking stupid.
I wonder how many former Panthers players are labourers that are going to be working on this stadium.
Oh, man.
Jobs for the boys.
Seriously. It's crazy. Yeah. I was so disappointed.
Mate, if they got $300 million into Leichhardt, you could almost get new urinal cakes in there, I reckon.
I reckon it'd take 180 million just to get the smell out of there. Hey,
I would 180 million to get the smell out. Another 100 million to get the you're going to get that jackhammer in there to get the old urinal cakes off, and then 20 million to put the new ones in.
And then about $75 to kill them fucking trees.
Now you got to keep the trees.
No, I want to kill them, Andrew.
No, they have a purpose, okay?
No, I want to kill them.
No, they're housing the white ants. You got to look after those trees.
Oh shit, that's funny.
White ants need somewhere to live, man. There's not much of the stadium left to eat. Look after them poor little buggers.
There's no fucking wood left.
No, there's nothing left. It's just dust and bits of concrete and few bits of pieces of steel.
I just can't wait until Penrith has spent $300 million to get what they've got up on the fucking central coast at Gosford. Hey, it's going to be really cool.
All the Bears fans are going to be sitting there going, geez, I hope it rains.
Yeah. Imagine, wouldn't it be ironic if it rained? Penrith had to play all the games at Parramatta, then went broke. Then the Bears come back and took over their license.
Yeah, then you got the Penrith Bears.
The Penrith Bears. Oh, shit.
And you got to go and watch. You got to go and watch 4 of their games at North Sydney Oval.
Yeah. Oh shit! You know what? After the last 3 years, I could cop that. I'd just be like, yeah, this is the tax. This is the tax for the 3-peat.
Yep. This is what happens now.
They start wheeling out fucking Greg Florimo and that in the back of Utes. We've all got to cheer them on.
Yeah.
Like they want something.
Panthers legends, Greg Florimo.
Yeah.
Tony Ray.
Penrith Bears legend, fucking Jason Taylor.
Oh, man. The memories.
Ah, good times. Remember Matt Sears before he started? No, I can't say that.
Started playing at West Tigers.
Yeah. Let's say it that way.
That's more incriminating.
Yeah. It's more of a slur.
He's like, oh, can you just talk about my drug history?
Oh, shit.
Don't remind me about my time at West Tigers. It's horrible.
He's a good player at his best, though, eh?
Fucking gun.
He was like a quicker version of Robbie Ross.
Absolutely. Very fast.
Yeah.
Insanely fast.
Yeah.
What else we got? They've had the English competitions have got started already.
Oh, have they?
Yeah, there was some massive scoreline recently. I've got to try and figure out what it was.
I think they're just in their trial phase.
There was one trial game. Was it Warrington? I can't remember. One of them had been played at a ground that had just been upgraded, and about 60 minutes into the game, the power went out.
Oh, that was at Wakefield. Yeah,
Wakefield.
Let me tell you something. I saw pictures of the upgraded Wakefield ground.
Yep. Looks like Penrith.
It looks like fucking Wakefield, man. I don't know what they did. But yeah, so that happened. And then I saw Hull FC got thrashed 40-0 by someone. I can't remember who it was. And then and all the Hull KR fans loved that. And then I saw St Helens lost to the Swinton Lions.
Yes.
But it's all right. I mean, it's just a trial game.
We should call them the Manchester Lions.
I wonder if their fans would go off at us like they did the poor board of directors at the club.
Bring it. The 1895 Cup got started.
Okay.
On January 27th.
Mm-hmm.
Newcastle played against York.
Yep.
And York had a rough day out there. They won 114-10.
Oh man, were they off that day?
Yeah.
To be fair, Newcastle folded over the off season and then come back about, I don't know, it's like 6 weeks before that game was played. So
it was 46-6 at half time.
Ooh.
So York's put on 68 points in the second half. And they missed 6 goals, so it could have been 126-10.
Well, they need a new goal kicker.
Yeah.
Terrible.
horrible. So their season's done, York. If you're going to have shit goal kicking like that, you're not going to go very far.
I don't understand what that 1895 Cup is.
It's a competition between the teams in League One.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But why?
Mate, it's England. And England just likes to have cups and tournaments and knockout stuff and like that all the time.
Yeah. They throw trophies around like it's confetti.
Yes. And just have 1 million games every season because
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Can I ask you, are you as excited as I am about the Las Vegas Rugby League venture by the NRL?
On a scale of David Nofaluma to 10, how excited are you?
Probably a Zach Lomax.
I'm a Nofaluma.
Oh, shit. I saw today the Rabbitohs are training on a field that is of the same dimensions that will be used for the game because it will be on a smaller playing surface, which straight away raised alarm bells for me.
Hang on.
Like, so I wonder if it's going to be because the regulations allow for larger or smaller markings on the field because, we don't always get a full-size rugby league pitch to use. But I wonder if it will be of the allowable NRL dimensions or if it will be just a little bit shorter, just a little bit squeezier.
Fuck, man. I don't think that's been an issue ever in Australian Rugby League. I know they've had to deal with it a few times in England.
Yeah.
We know of a few grounds they've got there where the dead ball line is scarily close to the fence.
Yeah, and
they've had to make the in goals smaller. But I think the regulations allow for the in goals to be made smaller, but not the playing field in the middle.
Well, the regulations we use, the regulations we have in the NRL. So every NRL game you watch for, I think it's been about the last 10 to 12 years, has had the exact same dimensions in terms of the playing surface because there was a game where it was messed around with. It might have actually been a test match between Australia and New Zealand, and the Kiwis marked the ground in width to the minimum of the standards that you could to try and negate Australia's ability to throw the ball around. From memory, they lost by a record scoreline in that game, so it didn't work. But after that game, it was decided that when you have the ability to mark out a full-size rugby league pitch, you have to mark it out that way.
Yep.
So I think the only time we've seen that not happen in the NRL is with the in goals at Melbourne Storm games when they played at Olympic Park. I think they were a little bit smaller than normal.
Yeah, because they played in the middle of they're on the inside of the running track.
Yeah, but so I think for everywhere else, it's like the in goal is 8 meters and that's standard. Whereas for that, I think it might have been 6 or 7 meters from memory. But over in England, they haven't got the big size pitches we do. They're playing on soccer pitches. So even the length of their fields are shorter in a lot of cases. So sometimes you'll see vision from a game in England and it'll look like someone's kicking a goal from like 60 meters out. It's not really 60 meters. It's just that the halfway mark is...
You can kind of see it when they zoom out and they show you the whole field.
And,
they show you the line, the halfway, 40, 30, 20.
Mm-hmm.
And just two lines look a lot closer than the rest.
Yeah.
Going, it'll be fine.
Yeah.
I assume, though, in America, would it just be because they do the field in yards instead of meters?
Well, what it is that obviously when they build the NFL stadiums, they build it to exactly the sort of dimensions they need for the NFL.
Correct.
Now, there's obviously not all of the space you need on the sidelines for all of their players and stuff, so you're able to push the rugby league sidelines out there. But I don't know how it's going to work in that stadium if they've got the ability to mark out a full NRL ground. They obviously don't because the Rabbitohs are training on a smaller marked out field. So I just wonder if it's going to be within the regulation size field or if it's going to be obviously different. Like when you look at it and you're like, this isn't a regulation rugby league pitch, you know?
Yeah.
Because what the other thing they've got too is they've got at that stadium, they've got a synthetic field and they've got a real grass field. And because the NFL team, I believe, plays on a grass field that is basically wheeled into the stadium from underneath. And so the NRL game is going to be played on a grass field. But yeah, I don't know if I'd love to know if it's going to be of a regulation size or if they're just going to fudge the numbers for this game.
Well, I mean, what we'll do is we'll have to send Nadine over there and she can just measure it for us.
Yeah, get the tape measure out.
Yeah.
Get one of those wheels, the things that with the wheel on the end that it ticks over every meter.
Yeah, trundle wheel.
Is that what it's called?
That's what it's called.
Okay.
So we'll get her a trundle wheel. We'll get her the flights over there. She can fly over there.
Yeah.
Just walk up and take the trundle wheel, measure it, and then get on the plane and come back.
Yeah, and fly back. Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing. I mean, if you stay there any longer, she might get shot. We can't have that.
we don't want her gambling or anything. Like.
Oh, you can gamble in Australia. It's fine.
Yeah. Bet responsibly. Did you see the story? There was a story I read where it said the NRL teams that are flying over are going to fly Air Fiji, except for the Sydney Roosters, who are going to fly United Airlines.
Right. Why does this matter?
I don't know. But I did think it was funny that that the other three teams are flying Air Fiji. Like they literally are doing they're doing the players' flights on a budget.
Well, you got to save as much coin as possible for the casinos, you see.
Yeah, it just seems very funny to me.
For the casinos that they're not going to go to, wink, wink.
Yeah. And and the other thing I read was that most of the teams are like flying in really late and then flying straight out.
That sounds like damage limitation by the NRL.
It does, doesn't it? Yeah.
I wonder how many players are going to end up with concussions and they've got to stay back for an extra week.
Oh man, the other bit of news was like, and this was such a beat up. Oh, there's dozens of players that can't get visas, and it's like I think they're going to work that out for fuck's sakes. Like I think rugby league clubs have worked out how to get visas sorted. You know, we got a team over in fucking New Zealand that we fly to every twice a year or whatever. So
half the English national team's playing in Australia.
Yeah.
We'll figure it out.
It was so silly.
Yeah. Oh dear. Well, it's been a good episode.
Yeah, I didn't think we would talk for as long as we did about the stuff we were going to talk about, eh?
Yeah, we say that nearly every time, and the next thing you know, Jesus Christ.
I know. It's great.
Well, people, make sure you check us out on all the socials. Please like and subscribe all the stuff on YouTube as well. That'd be awesome. What else is there?
Tell you what, if anyone wants to start messing with our YouTube page, making like small video clips and stuff that we'll put on there, let us know.
Oh, like those little shorts.
Yeah, that'd be cool. That'd be really cool. I actually looked up my video program when we talked about it a few weeks ago.
Oh yes, that insanely expensive program you've got.
Yeah,
the whole suite of operations.
I looked at it and then I shut it down and cried for about half an hour.
Joy, tears of joy, obviously.
Yeah.
How lucky am I?
If anyone wants to do that, we are open to suggestions.
All right, that's another job for Nadine.
Yeah.
She's busy.
Yeah.
Trundle wheel, YouTube login.
If she could just go those couple of things, it would be great.
Yeah.
At the same time, too, like I want to make in these videos on a phone as she's like tick, 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 tick down the sideline.
Don't get either of them wrong.
No.
Otherwise, we'll just have to get you to do them all again.
Yeah.
She'll be fine. She loves it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for tuning in, everyone. Make sure you check us out on all the socials. And we will catch you again very shortly. And hopefully it'll be with another history episode. There you go. Now I'm going to have to pull my finger out and get that done. See yous all. Catch yous all later.